51 cases now confirmed in Nigeria, it is very obvious that the federal government of Nigeria must step up with various measures in fighting the spread of coronavirus in the country.
Indeed, as partial lockdown begins today in Lagos State and some parts of the country, we continue our discussion on the legality of lockdown already in place, instituted by government. And joining us to discuss this is Liborous Oshoma, a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for joining us today on the morning show, Mr. Oshoma. I would like to know what side of the divide you are. I mean, is this a time, should we be talking about law and the absence of it, backing these measures being put in place by government at different levels to curb the spread of coronavirus in the country?
For me, this is not a time to be talking law and legality, because even in civilized countries that some of our lawyers are discussing law referred to, some steps were taken to lock down even borders before the legislature or the government decided to take adopt laws to what do you call it, fine-tune their laws to actually come in line with the steps taken, even in America that some of them have referred to. We've seen situations where the president in some cases had to restrict movement using Twitter. It is also very easy to say that in those areas that the laws were already in place. Also in our climate, we have laws that have also empowered officials to restrict movement, especially when you have crises like this. We have the Quarantine Act of 1926 or so. Even though it's a colonial piece of legislation, by virtue of Section 135 of the 1999 Constitution, that piece of law becomes, an act of our parliament. And so, even I've listened to argument of some senior advocate asking the president to declare a state of emergency, that is only when he declares a state of emergency that he can restrict movement. But in that same argument, they have also referred to this same act, which is the Quarantine Act, that the state governors should invoke the powers prescribed under Section 8 of the Quarantine Act of 1926, to be able to restrict movement. So what that means for me is that there is a law in existence, that the government is basically acting under. So there's nothing wrong with the steps that have been taken. What we should be particular about presently is to save human beings. And I've consistently also heard that if you do not move, the virus do not move.
Okay. Liborous, I'll come straight to you. We had Inibe here yesterday, and Inibe was arguing vigorously, saying that the Quarantine Act of 1926 has not even been invoked. It's not a law that is in there yet. That nobody has the rights to stop anybody. There's nothing to prosecute them on because things are not done legally. He also went further to cite the fact that the British government had to go through Parliament. Boris Johnson went through Parliament to get legal backing to be able to shut down the country. He also cited America, invoking the Emergency Act. But here, there is no law on ground. Do you think the government has the constitutionality and the legality to pursue this?
I agree with him, and I think he was being half-truth with the provisions of the law. If you permit me quickly, I have a copy of the Constitution here. If you read section 315, it says, subject to the provision of this Constitution, an existing law shall have effect with such modification as may be necessary to bring it into conformity with the provisions of the Constitution, and shall be deemed to be an act of the National Assembly to the extent that is a law with respect to any matter to which the National Assembly is empowered by this Constitution to make laws. And so, if we agree that the Quarantine Act of 1926 is a piece of legislation, whether be it colonial or not, because if you remember, in 2015 or so, the National Assembly attempted amending that act, but which also didn't see the light of the day. Do you amend a law that is not in existence in your country? You enact a new law. If the law were not in existence, there wouldn't have been an amendment. And then secondly, if you look at section 45 of the Constitution, it said nothing in section 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41 of this Constitution shall invalidate any law that is reasonably justified in a democratic society in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, and public health. And that Quarantine Act is a law that is reasonably justified in the interest of public health. And so I do not like this attitude of lawyers when rather than preach, health and safety, rather than find ways of encouraging people to comply with directives. We're not talking about environmental sanitation laws here. We're talking about life and death. Rather than find ways, meaningful ways of encouraging people, to find alternative to making a living and ensure that, you do not comply with directive and advisory from the state government and federal government, you begin to talk about laws. Let's assume that the federal government decides to declare a state of emergency. If this federal government declares a state of emergency, it will not just be a movement that will be restricted. A state of emergency will mean a total lockdown. All your fundamental rights also will be suspended. And I think the federal government is very careful in not going that hog. I took time to listen to the Commissioner for Health, Lagos State Commissioner for Health yesterday. And he said, issues like these are very dicey, especially looking at the environment and the society that we live in. We have a lot of people, majority of our population live on less than $2 a day. A lot of them live from hand to mouth. And the federal government also understands that if you shut down the entire country and suspend fundamental rights, some people who have to make a living daily, it will be practically impossible for them to do. And hunger, you might, in an attempt to stop one disease, you might even spread a bigger one, which will be hunger and starvation and deprivation. And so, to that extent, what the government is basically doing now is to ensure that you pass out information, orientate people as much as you can. And so let us leave all of these legalities. It is those that are alive that will be talking about how to implement laws.
Mr. Oshoma, it's a bit of dilemma here because as we saw, since this ban on gatherings came into effect, quite a number of people are still flouting this directive by the Lagos State government, the Ogun State government as well. But let's listen to what Inibe Efong had to say yesterday. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll be back to talk some more.
It is a bit ironic, and tragically so, to say in one breath that we have a national emergency, and in another breath, you are resisting my proposition that the time has come for the president to exercise the power vested in him under Section 305 of the Constitution to declare a national emergency on grounds of public health and public safety. Indeed, by virtue of subsection 4 of that Section 305, the president can declare a national emergency by stating the terms of that emergency when the Constitution says there is clear and present danger to public safety. The outbreak of coronavirus has clearly endangered public safety. There is no dispute about that. So I get a bit irritated, I'm sorry to say, when people tell me that, look, why are you talking about legality? Why are you talking about putting the laws in place when we are facing a national emergency? And at the same time, you are saying you don't need to declare a national emergency. So this contradiction underlies the point I am making, that until you have a legal framework, there is no way you can compel people to comply with what they are supposed to do. And look at what happened just on Sunday, when some religious leaders went about holding services in clear defiance of the government. Why have they done that? Because there is no sanction. Because there is no punishment. So let us stop talking about common sense. It is not everybody in Nigeria that is sensible.
Well, Liborous Oshoma, you heard Inibe Efong there. He was in the studio yesterday. So how do we deal with all of this? Because people are flouting this directive.
I have said time and time again, we have an act that has taken care of this. Even the learned senior advocate, Femi Falana, did advise the state governors to take provisions, to invoke provisions of Section 8 of the Quarantine Act to restrict movement, which is what the state governments are already doing. If the federal government had decided, in their opinion, not to declare a state of emergency because of the peculiar circumstances of our country, so as not to allow people to take, definitely, you know, in these societies, people will abuse rules and regulation. Even if you declare a state of emergency today, some people that want to hold service will still hold services. The issue here is that there is no, it is not lack of law that is our problem. It is an attitudinal issue that we have here. There are laws, and the state government, depending on the peculiarity of their state, have invoked the provisions of that federal act. And so you do not now need the president to lock down the entire country by virtue of Section 305 to say that, yes, the government is doing something. What if the government declares a state of emergency and there is nothing in place to ensure that there is compliance, or that, you know, because of that, some people, some law enforcement agents decided to use that state of emergency to go on a rampage? What we should be talking about is that, yes, we agree, there is an act already on quarantine. There is that act also empowers state government to restrict movement to avoid the spreading of infectious diseases. It also empowers state government officials to limit movement to avoid, a spreading of infectious diseases. And the state government had already, even without the provisions of the law, now the state government had even said, let's imagine you give an advice.
Liborous, we'll go on a quick break. We'll come back and you'll land on that point. I will ask more questions. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. Liborous Oshoma, you wanted to make a point there. You wanted to land on your point. But let me just add two questions to it, two insights. Number one, Governor Wike shut down the state yesterday. Pretty much air transport and everything is shut down in the state. And the second insight I'd like to add to all of this is Inibe went further ahead yesterday to say, I can draft this for the government. The government just needs something legal to back them up at all of this. What's your take about all of these issues?
The government does not need his drafts as an aside because already there is a law to that effect. And that is why you see the state governors are taking advantage of Section 8 of that Quarantine Act to take proactive steps to ensure that movements are restricted. And then, even if we have to declare a state of emergency, if you look at subsection 6 of Section 305, that state of emergency, if it is not supported by 2/3 majority of the National Assembly in 2 days when the House is sitting, and in 11 days or so when the House is not sitting, the state of emergency automatically lapses. And that is why the spread is peculiar to states. And depending on the peculiarity of the states, and what the governors are basically doing is to take steps to ensure. In some states, there's a partial lockdown. In some, there's a full lockdown, even though they still, like in Lagos State, they allow some markets to open that are selling essential services. But if you declare a state of emergency, even those markets will be closed. So the government that have decided to resort to an act, instead of invoking the provisions of Section 305, we cannot say they do not know what they are doing. So that is why, for me, we should join hands in educating people. The churches also should join hands in ensuring that when the government says sit at home, they also ensure that they help their people to sit at home, especially the aged and the vulnerable. And then secondly, for those people who have the capacity, who have the means to feed more than their family, they also should extend a helping hand to the poor people around them so that those people will be able to sit at home. This is not the time for us to be looking for what is not missing. We do not have, I cannot sit down here and tell you that all the steps that have been taken, there is no law backing it. He also had cited, because I had listened to him somewhere else, he also had cited the provisions of the directive of the state government as regards environmental sanitation laws. What happened in that case cannot be said They are not in pari materia with what basically is happening now, because at that time, what you have was a directive on environmental sanitation until government made environmental sanitation laws. So what we have is clearly a different case, and there are laws that basically covered all that the government had been doing.
Indeed, I totally agree with you on this one. Lives are important here. But you mentioned markets, and now we do have a Arise correspondent, Adefemi Akinsoya, who is visiting one of the markets in Lagos this morning to monitor what business activities are like at the market. To be precise, she's at the Balogun market here on Lagos Island. Femi, if you can hear us, tell us what's going on. Is this one of the markets to be locked down today?
Good morning, Adesuwa. As you can see, it is business as unusual. There are people on the streets, but this is a shadow of what Balogun Market usually is. Talk less of its prime. If you could just look behind me, you can obviously still see that there are people around, but the stores here are closed. There seems to be, from what we're seeing here, a very strict compliance with the Lagos State Governor's directive to make sure that it is only stores selling essential items, food stuff, open. So on this stretch of the market, which as we know is a sprawling one of the biggest in Lagos, if not the biggest in Lagos, we're outside textile stores and jewelry stores. So naturally, as in compliance with the directive, they have to stay closed. There are still very many people on the streets, even though we can see that businesses have complied with the directives in terms of social distancing. Those directives are still very much being flouted. As you can see, there's still people on the streets, people playing football, people squeezing juice and making juices out of fruit here. So definitely still some activity on the street, but this is nothing like the Balogun market we are used to seeing here in Lagos.
Well, thank you very much, Femi Akinsoya, Arise correspondent there at Balogun Market. Let me bring it back to Liborous Oshoma as we wrap up. Today, the Lagos State government is going to enforce that partial lockdown we've been talking about, especially on markets, not selling essential products. The police has also issued a statement that it will be extending this enforcement to shopping malls, stores, eateries, businesses, and gatherings of persons of not more than 25 people. Are you saying that they do not need any law backing this? The police will not be flouting any order, will not be encroaching on the rights and liberties of Lagos residents. That's what you're saying, basically, as we wrap up.
Thank Lagosians for heeding to the advisory by the Lagos State government. As you can see, there are no policemen whipping people not to open their shops. There are no mobile police vehicles stationed outside to ensure compliance. People now understand the times we are in, that we are indeed in a war situation, and that self-preservation is key here. And that so even without all of these legalese that we're talking about, a lot of people have decided to take their destiny in their hands by staying back at home until government gives further directive to say, yes, you can all come out now, that we've been able to at least pass the greater danger. You know, so the issue here is the fact that I read a section of the Constitution to you that a piece of legislation made by a National Assembly to ensure public safety, if your rights to freedom of movement are limited, you cannot validly say that your right had been violated, because there is a legislation that is limiting your right because of public health safety. And so here, what we basically have is, you know, government advising people stay back at home. And there is a law, and I maintain that there is a law already in place, even though it is a piece of colonial law. But by virtue of Section 315 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, that law has become an act of our National Assembly. And so we deal with what we have, except we amend further. But to now ask the president to declare a state of emergency, if we declare a state of emergency, we might be dealing with worse situation that we currently have.
Real quickly, Liborous, I wanted to ask this question. This is on the heels of what happened yesterday at the State House. Because of social distancing, some permits for media houses in the State House was dropped. Is this in violation anywhere of the Freedom of Information Act? Some media houses were selected to still be in the State House to report. Some were not selected. And the news out there is because they can control the information that is given this to these ones over the other ones. What do you say about that?
In the absence of information, rumor thrives. And like Wole Soyinka once said, when rumors start to thrive, even intellectuals are turned to for conveyor belts. It's unfortunate that government takes certain decisions, most especially our federal government. They take decisions and there is no explanation. There's no convincing explanation for it. Also, definitely in the absence of convincing explanation, there will be rumors, most especially taking into cognizance the antecedent of the federal government, as regard media gagging. I had expected that even if you're going to, because of social distancing, to now select a few and leave out the others, what are the criteria used in selecting the ones that have been selected? So that will definitely leave a lacuna and will give room for people to spread rumor. I think government should come out clean on that.
In 60 seconds, if you can, while we appeal to the consciences of people to please follow this laid-down directive to curb the spread of coronavirus, those who flout the law, we have another Sunday beckoning, we have another Friday beckoning for Jumat service and Sunday services. What would you be advising the state governments to do to such people?
First and foremost, we need to advise those people that if you do not move, the virus does not move. If you remember, in South Korea, when they had about 30 cases only, and then the spiritual leader of South Korea gathered about 6,000 people together to pray for the eradication of the virus. At the end of that day, they had about 400 cases. In what do you call it? In Iran, that was in Iran. In South Korea, patient number 31 insisted that she was going to attend a church service. She attended church service, and the number skyrocketed from 20 to about 600. So the advice to people is that you do not know the people you are attending churches with. You do not know the people you are attending mosques with. You do not know where they have been to. The best thing, God is everywhere. God is seeing the situation happening worldwide. You can sit down in the comfort of your home and worship God. Worship Allah and worship Christ. On Sunday, I attended Mass in the comfort of my sitting room. And so, people should be advised. The pastors, sorry to say this, will insist, will want tithe and offering, insisting as if tithe and offering is all there is to God. If you sit down at home, your heart, God sees your heart. And so there is no need, to put yourself at arm's length, because even the state of our health facilities is bad enough. It's unfortunate that our leaders can't even go abroad.
And it's unfortunate that we have to end it here. Thank you. Even tithes and offerings can be paid online these days, and you do look fantastic in that outfit. May I thank Liborous Oshoma for coming on the show this morning.